Hi everyone, my name is Xavier and today I'm teaching you how to film and edit online storytime videos, but more importantly, how to film and edit them really easily, really quickly, and in the most effective way as possible that doesn't take too much time. That's my job today. I'm a very big advocate that you don't need lots of equipment. You don't need to make it complicated. It is possible to get a formula, a system that you follow every time where you can very quickly just set up your camera on a tripod, hit record, film your segment and very quickly edit it together. That's what we're going to be covering today. Just a little bit about myself. I am a videographer of 8 years. I've made all types of videos, a lot of marketing videos, promotional videos. Really, at the end of the day, I'm very passionate about getting other people up and running making videos. Getting stuff online is more and more important. And if you don't sort of get that skill under your belt now, if you don't give it a crack, you're just gonna wish you did year after year. And this is what I'm here today to show you, is just how you can get up and running and how you can use this skill for life going forward. So there's 4 main areas for creating really nice videos. And these are the 4 areas. We're talking about your story, the shots, the sound, and the editing. The editing we're going to cover in a separate training video using Film Aura, which is a fantastic editing program. But today we're gonna mainly be focusing on how to get a good shot and how to get good sound. But before that, let's just talk about story. And what I mean by story is just asking yourself these questions. Why are we making this video? Who do we want to watch this video? And what's our plan? And just asking yourself these few questions can really help determine what your video is going to look like, even where you're going to film it, how long it's going to be, what you need to include in the end and at the start. I think for you, these questions have been answered already. Why you're making it and who do you want to watch it? You have a vision with these online storytime videos. But what I want to talk about is the last point there, what's your plan? And really this comes down to what equipment do we need, where can we film it, and who's going to be in it. And if you can get these sort of 3 things down to a formula, once again, you know where you're going to go, you know what pieces of equipment you need, and you know who's going to do the reading. Just being able to not have to think about that every time and trying to find new solutions every time and new locations, it may be easier just to get these 3 things down to a system. So it's Wednesday, we know that it's filming day, we know that we start at 9 a.m, we know where we go, we know the 3 bits of equipment we need, and we know who we need to be in the video. Then you don't have to use that brain power to think about it again. So we have a bit of a plan, it's time to film, and this is what I really want to teach you today. Let's start off with equipment. Everyone asks me, what equipment do I need? If you look on this slide here, at the end of the day, it boils down to these 4 pieces of equipment. You have your camera, which can be your iPad or your iPhone or a DSLR camera. We're going to cover all of them today. You need a tripod, you need a light, and you need a microphone. And that's it. There are lots of other bits of pieces of equipment, lots of other gadgets. At the end of the day, it's just these 4 things. Your camera, which sits on a tripod, where you plug in your microphone, and you flick on the light to make the shot look beautiful. That is it. It's so important just to get this equipment side of things down to a T. The equipment lives in the same spot in the library. You know that you charge it at the end of each session. You know that no one's taken it home and that you don't know where the camera is or the SD card. Get this equipment down to a formula, down to a system. Make it easy for yourself when it is filming day. And this equipment isn't expensive. You can go into JB Hi-Fi, Ted's camera, obviously, and buy this stuff, but I will say that if you do head online, particularly on Amazon, it is probably about 1/4 of the price, especially for that LED light you can see there. You know, these 3 items of equipment aren't a huge investment, but there is a piece of equipment here that I've just shown on the slide. That's a wireless transmitter and receiver for the microphone. So if you don't want to have the microphone wire going from the person speaking, like on me here, all the way to the floor into the camera or the iPad, you can get a wireless transmitter and receiver. So that allows the person to be anywhere in the room, they can be walking and talking, and you don't have to worry about any wires. So it is my #1 extra gadget that I recommend people to buy. But you know, if the camera's sitting there on a tripod, you might not need to have the wireless system. You can just plug it in with the wire. And like I said, instead of the iPad or an iPhone, maybe you have a DSLR camera, like the Canon 80D that we have here. And you know, these cameras can take more beautiful shots, but at the end of the day, you just have to toss up, is it worth the extra time and the extra energy fiddling around with a DSLR camera for a slightly more beautiful shot, or is it easier just to get the iPad, hit record, and it's sort of all done for you? So I have the equipment here that you need. These are the absolute essentials. So firstly, I have my camera, which in this case is an iPhone. You could have a DSLR camera at your library, and we're going to talk about how to use that as well. But for now, I'm just going to pick the iPhone as my go-to camera. Then I have a tripod, and this tripod's from Amazon. It was the $79 one that I showed you on the screen. The other absolute essential piece of equipment you need is a microphone. And this is almost just as important as your shot, because there's no point in having a really beautiful shot if you don't have good sound. And unfortunately, sound is the number one thing that lets people's videos down. They've framed it lovely, they've got nice lighting, they've got great quality, but the sound just isn't there. So if you don't have a microphone, you have to get one. And what you want to do is get a lapel microphone like this. These small clip-on microphones that clip onto the person's shirt as they're speaking, and you have beautiful sound right from near their mouth going straight into the camera. There's ones that can plug directly into a smartphone, just like this one, or straight into an iPad. And there are ones that are made to plug into a DSLR camera. And you just have to be careful, because if you do get the one that's made for a DSLR camera and you try to plug it into your phone or your iPad, it won't register. You will need an adapter. On that note, you may have seen or heard of this type of microphone. This is a shotgun microphone, and whilst they're fantastic, what they do capture all of the sound in the room. They capture some of the background noise, the ambient sound that's going on, and really if you do have someone sort of speaking to the camera like I'm doing, it's best just to get them clipped up with a lapel microphone, then you have that really good sound straight from near their mouth going straight into the camera. So if you do have one of these and a lapel microphone, you can sort of leave this one in the cupboard, and you're just going to be using your lapel microphone for the person speaking to camera. And last but not least, the fourth piece of equipment is a light. And this is an LED light. They are getting cheaper and cheaper, really easy to use. I'm just going to open up the barn doors here. And simply put, this is just to shine on your subject, on the book or the person speaking. It's just going to make them pop. It's going to make the shot really crisp and clear. You know, for an extra $100 investment, I would absolutely recommend one of these. And they're really important to help combat some of the harsher lighting conditions you can get indoors from the fluorescent lights on the roof, or, you know, lots of sun coming out of the background. This is going to help you film even in those conditions. You can get batteries that go into the back of these lights, so that it's battery powered and you have no wires. Or to save some money, you can just have this plugged into the wall. But what you will need, obviously, rather than someone holding it like I am, you will also need a light stand. So that's just like a tripod just to put your light on top of whilst you shine it on the person speaking. Okay, so we are ready to actually film. But firstly, there's three things I'm going to talk about. Camera settings, how to film a piece to camera, kind of like I'm doing now. And that's the main part when you're speaking with the book. And three, if you want to take it to the next level, how we can get some sort of close-ups of the book and interlace that with the piece to camera shots. But let's start with camera settings. We're going to look at camera settings for the iPhone, then we're going to look at camera settings for the DSLR. Firstly, iPhone. The great thing about filming with your iPhone or iPad is that it sort of does almost everything for you. And that's why, like I said, I'm a big advocate that if you do need to just get the content out there, you might just want to go ahead and grab the iPad or an iPhone. It's going to do a lot of the work for you. So when you open up your iPhone to take a video, make sure obviously that you're on video mode, and really there's only two settings to take note of, and they're displayed in the top right corner of the shot. And you'll see that if I click HD, it switches to 4K, and if I click the 60, it changes to 24, to 30, to 60. So let's talk about what these mean. 4K is the next level of quality. The great thing about filming on an iPhone or an iPad is that 4K is an option for you. So 4K essentially is going to be 4 times the quality. We can see on a diagram here that the 4K dimensions are almost 4 times the dimensions of the HD. So it is going to be a significant increase in quality. However, you just need to make sure that your computer can actually handle the 4K footage. If you can film something in 4K and your computer can work with it, then I would absolutely recommend it. The other number that we saw on the iPhone in the top right-hand corner was the frames per second. And the human eye naturally sees at about 25 frames per second. The American version of that with the iPhones and iPads is 30 frames per second. The only reason you would change that to film at 50 or 60 frames per second is if you wanted to do slow motion. That lets you slow down the clip by 50% and you'll still have 1 frame in every second and it will look perfectly smooth to the human eye. Otherwise, if you're not doing slow motion, you can just leave this at the default 30 frames per second on the iPhone or the iPad. On a DSLR, we'd leave it at 25 frames per second, and that's it. You don't have to touch that number again. You can set these settings from the top right-hand corner of the iPhone. You could also go into the camera menu, as I'm displaying here, and you can change it to the settings there. That means every time you open an iPhone, it will be on those settings. You don't have to remember them again. Now let's talk about using a DSLR camera, because I know some of you have these at your libraries, you'd like to know how to use them. The good news is for video on these things, the settings are very much set and forget. We do need to manually set the camera to make sure that it's exposing our shot correctly, but a lot of the settings can just stay the same, and each time you turn on the camera, they should still be there waiting for you. And at the end of the day, if this can shoot at 4K and the iPad or iPhone can shoot at 4K, you might be wondering what's the difference? In a nutshell, it's this ability with these DSLRs to create this sort of blurred background effects. A lot of people associate that with a sort of professional look, and that's what you see with professional photos, where the person speaking is beautifully in focus and the background is blown out of focus. That's called your depth of field or your bokeh. I like to break it down really simply and just call it blurred background. And again, the reason why people invest in these cameras and invest in the fancy lenses is to achieve that beautiful blurred background effects. So within the menu of the camera, we do need to make sure that we're choosing whether we want to film in HD or 4K if your DSLR can do it. Some of the new ones can shoot at 4K, and it's definitely worth a test run because the 4K footage will look beautiful if your camera can do it. And you do need to make sure you're filming at the 25 frames per second. But once that's done, any camera, whether it's a Canon, whether it's a Sony, they have just 3 settings that control how the shot looks. Those 3 settings are shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. And 2 out of these 3 settings can essentially be set and then you can forget about them, and then you just have the ISO that you need to worry about. So on a Canon camera, and it will look similar on a Sony or a Nikon, those 3 numbers are displayed down the bottom when you're filming. And if you can't see the numbers, you may need to press the info or display button on your camera to see some more information. You can see for the Canon, you have your shutter speed on the left, your aperture in the middle, and your ISO on the right. So what do we set these numbers to? Let's have a look. Your shutter speed is the one on the left there. We are going to set this number to double your frames per second. So that means our shutter speed, we set it to 50 and then we forget about it. That's it. You set it to 50, that number's done. We're only left with 2 more numbers to worry about. We have our aperture and our ISO. Our aperture, simply put, if we want that blurred background effects, we want that depth of field, that's why we spent the money in the camera, well, we set that aperture number lower for more blurred background. It's also going to let in more light, which is extremely important when you're indoors. You need to let in usually as much light as possible. So we're going to set that aperture number as low as possible. On this camera, our aperture can go to 5. So that's going to create some depth in our background. So I'm going to set the aperture to 5. It depends on your camera where the dial is, but these dials will change each of those numbers. Or it's touchscreen on this camera. I'm going to set it to the lowest it can go, which is 5, and that number's done. So our shutter speed is set to 50. Our aperture is as low as it can go for the blurred background look. We are left with our ISO. And simply put, we turn up the ISO to make the shot brighter if it's too dark. The more you crank it up, the ISO, your shot will start to lose quality. So try to use your light, try to brighten up the shot as much as possible, and then you just use the ISO to get that final piece of brightness. The other thing you need to make sure is that you're filming in manual mode. So what we just did then, we took manual control of the camera. And that's important because we've spent the money on this camera. We want to make sure that it's doing exactly what we want it to. We've learned how to use the manual settings, so make sure you change to manual mode on your camera. And on a Canon, it's the M dial on the top of the camera. And it's similar on a Sony. So those 3 settings on manual mode are what you need to set your Canon, your Sony, whichever camera you have, set to those 3 settings, and you're going to have a beautiful looking shot. we are ready to film. And we are going to film our piece to camera, us speaking to the camera with the book for our online story time. Now, the piece to camera, the great thing about it, it's going to follow a formula. When we look at these 4 piece to camera examples we have here on our slides, we can see that they will follow a few similar rules. And on this slide here, I have the 7 rules that we need to make sure we're checking off when we film our piece to camera. It is very much like a formula. I'm going to give you a QR code now on the screen that you can scan. If you want to pause it, scan this QR code. This is going to give you the 7 steps checklist on your phone for next time you go to record. Just make sure you're ticking those off. If you tick off those 7 steps, you're going to have a nice looking shot. It's as easy as that. So now with Liz, we're going to put this into practice together. We're going to set up here at the makerspace and make our piece to camera using these 7 steps. So let's go. I'm going to be filming on my phone. Don't forget, step number 1, you need to clean your camera lens. Nothing fancy, just get the lens and give it a bit of a wipe with your shirt. You have to do that or else your shot's going to look a bit fuzzy. Clean the camera lens. And we're going to bring in Liz, who is our subject, and we're going to start framing our shot. Hey, Liz. So, step number 2 is to bring the person away from the background. And what happens, let's actually get a chair. And what often happens is that people will say, look, this is a beautiful background, and they're going to get their subject, and they're going to pop them in the background. So having our subject Liz really close to the background, like she is now, you'll see that there isn't any depth between her and the books. Everything's sort of in focus. Not only is Liz in focus, but the background is also just as much in focus. And it's a bit distracting. So what we're going to do, we're going to take Liz and we're going to take a big step forward away from the background. One big step forward. If you have a seat again, we can actually see that the bookcase in the background has really blown out, has dropped away, and that the subject in the foreground is now beautifully in focus. Okay, so Liz usually films herself speaking to camera, so we're actually going to get the tripod and get the camera on the tripod. I'm going to pass it to Liz, and we're going to fold out the tripod to the right length, which is going to be eye level. So if you don't mind setting it up roughly to eye level height. And here's a tip, by the way. With these tripod legs, if you're going to pull out just one of them, don't pull out the smaller one, pull out the top one because the leg is wider, is a bit more steady. So we'll do that on all the legs. Perfect. And I think, yep, lock them in. Great.
All locked in.
Nice. In order to attach a phone to a tripod, we do need some sort of adapter because the phone can't just screw onto the tripod here. This is a smartphone adapter for $20. You can also get ones for iPads so that they can go on the tripod. So I'm going to give this to Liz. And with the tripod, you have to note that you don't screw it directly onto the tripod. You actually take off the base plate and then you'll attach it to the base plate. Then the whole thing will go back on the tripod. There's a little lever to tighten it at the bottom of the base plate.
Just that one under there?
That's it.
That feels pretty tight.
Good.
Secure it back in here.
That's it. Nicely done.
Good.
So now our phone can go into the tripod. So we are going to put the phone into the phone holder and it will slot in and we'll twist it to secure it. Make sure it's not pushing the buttons on the side of the phone. And we can see what's happening through our frame. So our third point was to fill the frame. And this is a bit of an extreme example, but obviously right now our frame is not composed correctly. We have enormous room above Liz's head and it doesn't need to be there. We need to fill the frame. This frame has a lot of room above Liz's head. We have stuff on the side that we don't want to be there. And of course, I could just twist the camera down, but now this is breaking rule number 4 on my list, which is to keep the camera at eye level. So I'm actually going to reset that back to horizontal, and I'm going to bring the whole tripod down to eye level. And a quick way to do that is to take one whole level off the tripod, this entire bottom level, I'm going to tighten those up. And it may still be too high. Let's find out. So at least now we're at eye level with Liz. However, we're still breaking our main rule, number 3, about filling the frame. We have this room all the way at the top. We have some things on the side that we don't want. So let's fill this frame. Let's make the frame have purpose. We may need to come down a level on the tripod, one more level. Then we can make some final adjustments just to fill the frame a bit more nicely. What I'm doing actually is removing a whole nother level. This is going to be too short, but then all tripods actually have a middle section of some sort where you can pull out to make adjustments. So that means you don't have to individually change the 3 legs to a certain size. You can just pull out this middle section. My frame is looking a lot nicer already. Now we've got Liz on one side of the frame. That's because on the right-hand side is going to be where you're holding the book. So this is looking a lot better. We are up to step number 5, which is to use a light. This is going to make a massive difference to this shot because right now we have a lot of light coming from behind Liz. And this is where a simple LED light can help combat, tough lighting conditions. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the LED light and on a light stand. This will just fold out like so. And the light is simply going to go on top. And now we're going to shine this on Liz. And it's very easy. You just point it at the subject. You don't need to get too complicated with it. We're just using it to make the subject a little bit brighter. And if I turn off and on the lights, we can see before and after. I'm going to make that quite a bit brighter. Maybe point it slightly closer to Liz. And again, if we look at before and after. So I do want to work my frame a bit more. We're getting there. We've got it at eye level. We've filled the frame nicely so far, but let's get the book in the frame so we can make a few final adjustments. I'm going to pass this to Liz. And Liz, do you mind holding open the book how you would when you're reading?
Of course.
Okay, so we are getting there. What I can see from looking at the frame, it's a bit messy in the background. So I'm going to make a few adjustments. I'm actually going to go behind and remove this yellow block. So you want to think about what's in your frame, but also what isn't in your frame, what's in the background that might be distracting the viewer. I might move these. I'm even going to take this and move it to the side. So the frame's looking a lot nicer now, but there is some shine from our light on the book. And there's no rule on how to get rid of this shine. It is going to be a problem that you encounter with books, is the shiny surface. But I think just by moving this light to this side, it may help with that shine. And it's looking a bit better. There's a bit of shine still, so I'm just going to move the light, play around. And here, just from using a bit more of an angle, it looks like it has removed some of that shine. So if we compare how our shot looked without the framing, without filling the frame, without being eye level, with no lights, with what we have now, we've made some huge progress. So like I said, just follow those steps on the checklist one by one. After a while, you won't need to use a checklist, but use the checklist at the beginning. And we are now up to step number 6. We need to plug in our microphone. Okay, so I've got my lapel microphone here. This lapel microphone is made to plug directly into a smartphone or an iPad. So as you may know, the iPhone doesn't have the headphone jack anymore, so you'll need the adapter that we can plug in, and now that can go into the iPhone like so. With the microphone itself, we need to essentially put it as close as we can to the person's mouth on their shirt. So you can see the one I've got here is positioned like this. And so you just get the clip and you pop it on their shirt. And it doesn't have to be, there's no like really strict rules, as long as it's relatively close to where they're speaking. and it's not being touched by their hair or other clothing items, because that will ruffle the microphone as they're speaking. So I'm going to pass this to Liz. Now, if they are struggling to do it, you can help them pop it on their shirt or their clothing. That's perfect. And we're just going to hide the wire as best as we can. So that's perfect what Liz has done. She's hid some of the wires. Don't worry about trying to hide the actual microphone itself. If you look at any video, you'll see the microphone's always sticking out there anyway. It's just capturing that really clear sound from them speaking, and we've hidden the wire the best as we can, and it's going on the floor into the phone. And like I said, if you wanted, you could invest in a wireless receiver and transmitter. They're about $250. The transmitter would sit in Liz's pocket, and the receiver would attach to the phone, and then you have no wires. We have our microphone plugged in. We need to do one last thing on that list, and that's to check the sound. We don't just want to start recording. We'll do a test run. We'll make sure the mic's picking up the sound, then we're good to go. Okay, so back to the phone for the sound test. And what I would do is say, hey Liz, do you mind just tapping on the microphone?
Sure.
And could you please read the name of the book so we can test the sound?
Yep, it's Open Your Heart to Country by Jasmine Seymour.
Fantastic. I'm going to stop there, and when the microphone is plugged in, if I go to play back my video, you won't hear anything. That's because the iPhone thinks that you have a pair of headphones plugged in. So in order to listen to what we've recorded, we will need to unplug the mic for now, and I can play my video. Hey Liz, do you mind just tapping on the microphone?
Sure.
And could you please read the name of the book so we can test the sound?
Yep, it's Open Your Heart to Country by Jasmine Seymour.
Great, so the reason why I got Liz to tap on the microphone is because you might not actually be sure that the sound is either picking up from the phone microphone or the lapel microphone. So by tapping on it, you can be 100% sure that it's picking up the lapel microphone. I just want to do a test without sound to show you what it sounds like without a microphone recording straight from an iPhone, just to show you the importance of using your lapel microphone. So let's do a little test run now. Hey Liz, do you mind please reading out the name of the book?
Sure. It's Open Your Heart to Country by Jasmine Seymour.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to play that back to you and we'll hear the difference.
It's Open Your Heart to Country by Jasmine Seymour. Open Your Heart to Country by Jasmine Seymour.
So hopefully you could hear the significant difference from using a microphone. It's just worth every penny, so make sure you're always using the lapel microphone and that you're testing it. And I do just want to show you once more what it looks like. Try to get a light to shine on the subject and always your microphone plugged in. We're going to do a little piece to camera now so that we have something to edit in our editing session. So let's take it away.
Open your heart to country. Let play soothe your lonely feet. Welcome home, lost children, to land singing you back home.
So if you did film that piece to camera on your DSLR instead, you do have the 3 settings that you need to set that we spoke about, but also make sure your focus mode is set to automatic so that no matter where the book's moving or the person speaking to camera, that it's automatically going to keep focusing on what they're pointing at and what they're saying. Each camera is a little bit different, but on the Canon, you can access all these settings with a Q button, which is the quick menu. And the very first menu in the top left is the autofocus menu. And you can choose the method in which it focuses. And I've got it so that it's just anything in the center of the screen is going to be in focus. I want to take it to the next level now. It's nice the shot we have, the piece to camera, but with the editing skills I'm going to teach you next, what you'll be able to do is intersplice the piece to camera with some close-ups of the book. And it's really important because we have some beautiful art in the book. I really want to, get some more detailed shots. And the other thing that lets you do is sneakily in the edit, you could actually do your piece to camera in multiple takes, and you can sort of hide your edits with the close-up shots. And that means you don't have that immense pressure to do it all perfectly in one take. You know that you can hide some of your cuts with the B-roll shots. So what do I mean by B-roll shots? I'm going to show you some examples on the screen, but really it's just some close-ups of the book that we get afterwards, and in the edit we put them over the top of the main piece to camera. So then it's going to transition from the main piece to camera to a close-up of the book, back to Liz. It's just going to make our video a lot more interesting and be able to let us show off the details of the book. So I'm going to take my phone out of the tripod. We're going handheld to accumulate these B-roll shots. And we're just looking to get a bunch of sort of 5 to 10 second grabs of the different pages of the book. So Liz, if you don't mind holding up the front cover, I'd like to get a nice shot of the front cover. And what we want to do with B-roll is we want to, again, fill the frame, make sure there's not any room to the left or the right. We don't want it to be sort of like that, where we have all this space here that doesn't add anything. Let's fill the frame, and we're going to hit record and grab a nice 3 or 4 second shot. Now I'm adding a bit of movement. I'm actually very close to the book and scanning down from the top to the bottom. So it's really nice to add that movement. What you want to do is lock in your elbows, which I wasn't doing. And if you lock in your elbows, you can get a really steady shot. So I'm going to start at the top, hit record, and then add this 5 second close up of the book. So I'm just getting 5 or 10 second grabs. And when it comes to editing, I can take that grab and put it anywhere I want over the top of the person speaking. And I'm going to get some nice close-ups of this book. And I've got the light here making it a lot nicer shot. As you may know with the iPhone, you touch to choose where it focuses. Make sure what you're not doing is sort of hitting record and adding movement from the left and then going down. That's when it's a bit unnatural to the audience. So you just want to be getting a recording in one direction. So either down and then stop, or start on the left and move to the right, but very slow movement. We want the 5-10 second shot just to be that one direction of movement for those 5 or 10 seconds. So I'm actually just gonna, whilst I'm on this page, just get another grab. Same thing, frame it up, hit record, add some very gentle movement. Now I'm struggling a bit because my arms are extended. Lock in your elbows and you're gonna have a lot easier time adding that movement up or down. Okay, so one more page we'll do just for reference. Thank you, Liz. All right, it's beautiful art, so I'm gonna try to capture the whole thing. Nice close up, bit of movement. Great, so I've got a nice 8 second shot there, just scanning the page from left to right. And it's gonna be really easy in editing to grab that and to add it to our story to show the beautiful detail of the book. But let's talk about what if you're by yourself. What we're gonna do is just repeat that, but we're gonna put the book on the ground and just get scanning shots of the book on the ground and use that for our B-roll. Just accumulating these 5-10 second grabs. So I'm gonna fill the frame, hit record, maybe pan from the top. Got the author there, and stop recording. So I've got an 8 second grab of the front page. When I put the book on the ground, I noticed a lot of problems with the light. It was shining, and then I realized it's because we are directly under the overhead light, so when the book's facing flat towards the lights, it's unfortunately has a lot of shine. What I'm gonna do to help fix that is just put the book up on an angle, just against the stand here. And even that has helped significantly. When I look back through my phone, the shot is looking a lot more beautiful. I've got some light problems here again, so I'm just going to move the book around until the lighting looks nicer. Just playing around until we can see that the glare isn't flicking back at us. So that's a lot better. And I'm going to hit record. And just capture the detail of that page. So I didn't actually add that much movement in that shot. I just wanted to show a close-up that can be used together with our piece to camera. Getting those B-roll shots, you can start to get a bit creative with them. You can do over the shoulder as the person's opening the book, or you can do on the ground like we did, or the person holding the book up. But just making sure that you're playing around with the light so that the book isn't shiny is probably the biggest challenge. So you can get a bit creative with the B-roll. It's just gonna take your video to the next level. It is optional, so if you're just starting out, maybe you just wanna do the piece to camera. if you want to take it to the next level, start adding in those B-roll shots to show the detail of the book. And if you do have two people, it'd be a lot easier because Liz could just hold up that book and you're just accumulating those 5-10 second long B-roll shots. But please, put all of this into practice as soon as possible. The longer you leave it after watching this video, the easier it will be to forget. So just give it a crack. It'll get easier and easier. Use the checklist that I provided you. And I think you'll see some really nice results really quickly. And once you've done it 1 or 2 times, it's just going to get easier and easier. Editing is next. And again, if you have any questions at any point of the way, just reach out to me and I'd be happy to help. Thank you.